Hello, class. My name is Kory Woods, and today I will be talking about the idea of making up people, and how, in turn, that is related to our perception of modern representations of autism. Instead of following the traditional path through the natural versus interactive kinds, I'll be making the connection of Hacking's ideas directly to the paradoxes that lie within autism. The first thing I want to discuss is making up people, a term coined by Ian Hacking. Now, this may sound a bit ludicrous when you first hear it, so let me explain it. Making up is something we all know of as creating, and in terms of sociology, the term seems to have more importance to categorization. The idea of making up people, then, is the research into the creation of different human behaviors, disorders, and other categories. We can think of this phenomenon in one of two ways: the realist perspective and the nominalist perspective. The realist position states that categories exist independent of how or when they are being named, while the nominalist position states that new categorizations can create new ways of being. We can further explain the realist perspective through the idea of the stars. A realist would argue that stars have always existed, and that all of them already held similarities that would put them into the same category before we name them. Meanwhile, a nominalist would disagree. One way to clarify the nominalist perspective is by taking a look at the beginning of Hacking's article. It begins with a quote by philosopher Arnold Davidson, who, in response to the question, were there any perverts before the latter part of the 19th century, he had this to say: no, perversion was not a disease that lurked about in nature. It was a disease created by a new and functional understanding of disease. These understandings can help us to better realize Hacking's rationality of dynamic nominalism. Dynamic nominalism is summed up as a glove, or that the category and the people merge hand in hand. I agree with this idea, but instead of just looking deeper into what Hacking has to say, I want to show how these realist and nominalist points of view can be used together, and also the potential benefits and downfalls associated with that. We'll now discuss the potential effects on autism. In my opinion, the realist point of view can be seen as detrimental for a variety of reasons. One thing I attribute to this realist idea that may not be widely accepted is that by simply accepting that people with autism existed before, we may start to abandon further research into people with autism. What makes me think this? Well, a realist would argue that all things that we know existed before our discovery, and therefore they may have less desire to search for answers, rather than continue to research into autism and the different categories. This is problematic due to major impacts on social and medical benefits. Say, for example, that the subgroup of Asperger's had not been created. Many experts say there's a large, distinct difference between the two, as children have different needs. If we do stop fully researching into this, we may be disallowing a large number of children from correct treatment and proper learning environments, which I don't really have to expand on why that would be a bad idea. However, in saying this, I'm not insinuating that the realist mindset is completely incorrect. I do agree that the recently found branches of autism did exist before they're named, but I would argue that the new, functional understanding mentioned in Hacking's article leads to a further quest for knowledge. That quest is what differentiates the two mindsets. As a disclaimer, I would also note that these ideas are truly theoretical, and I believe in the arguments I'm presenting, but the many paradoxes that lie within autism itself may disallow these ideas from being concrete. Things like the undesirability of autism and various ways to categorize, including lumping and splitting, may cloud the overall argument. Moving on, the last question I'd like to answer is how should we deal with making up categories of autism in the future? As long as we can continue to make progress in our understanding of autism, we should continue to research and find new categorizations. These more complex categories allow for people to understand the disorder they may have and not just group them as one of them. It also gives them that idea that they are able to learn in a proper learning environment and they have the correct treatment there for them. I believe that in a sense we should adhere to the ideas of the realist due to the fact that these types of autism simply do exist, but that should not, in turn, cause us to stop searching and accept people as simply autistic. As Verhoff stated, functional genomics, epigenetics, and systems biology are among the new hopes in a phase of solving the autism puzzle. So we should continue to do our due diligence in making sure that the human disorders are correctly identified. The potential positives vastly outweigh the potential negative effects. So in order to push forward, we should look at autism from a nominalist perspective, all the while keeping in mind the perspective of realists. Thank you.